Hashtag Monstera Deliciosa. Hashtag Monstera Borsigiana. Hashtag Monstera Variegata. Hashtag they're different plants. Did you know? Hi my salty pecans and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, my name is Pamela and I'm literally getting devoured by Monstera Swiss cheese plants. Oh my gosh, guys, get off of me, please. Show some sensibility. Oh my god, stop. Anyways, on today's video, I am going to be actually telling you all the difference between a Monstera Deliciosa and a Monstera Borsigiana. Yes, they are not the same plant, although they do look literally exactly the same. Pretty much to the naked eye, this plant is like, what is the difference aside a name, you know? What is it that Shakespeare says, or was it Plato? Is like, what is it in a name? But yada yada yada. I'll put the correct thing that I'm thinking of. But anyways, like I said, on today's video I'm going to be telling you the identifiable difference between a Monstera Deliciosa and a Monstera Borsigiana. So if you're interested in knowing the difference between these two plants and also figuring out whether or not you own a Monstera Borsigiana or a Monstera Deliciosa, so if you're interested in these little knowledge facts, then keep on watching. So welcome back everybody. Right here I am actually holding a variegated Monstera, and behind me I also have the green version of these Monstera. So at the end of the video I am going to be identifying with you all whether or not I own a Deliciosa or a Borsigiana. But in the meantime I'm going to put this down because I can't be chatting with a plant on my lappy. You want to know what the difference between a Monstera Deliciosa and a Monstera Borsigiana are. Well, I am here to tell you there are a few identifiable differences between the two plants that you can identify just by looking at the plant and just knowing exactly what you are looking for. If you're unsure whether or not a plant is a Borsigiana or a Deliciosa, whether you're out in the shops or you're purchasing one online. As mentioned, the Monstera plants, the Swiss cheese plants, come in two separate varieties. It is either variegated or it's not variegated. And when I mentioned variegated, it comes in different forms of variegations. You can have a Thai constellation, you can have the Borsigiana Deliciosa variegated, you can have the Aurea, you can have the mint. So there are a few different varieties, including the solid green, that the Monstera plant does come in. These plants are native to Mexico and Panama. If you ever wondered, hey, where does a Monstera come from? Where do they originate? Now you know, Mexico and Panama. The few key things that you're looking for when you want to identify whether your plant is a Borsigiana or a Deliciosa are the leaf size, the growth rate, and also pricing. So the Borsigiana has a vining growth pattern with longer stems but smaller leaves than the Deliciosa. So even though the leaves are smaller than the Deliciosa, it also has a faster growth rate compared to the Deliciosa. So the Borsigiana grows faster than a Monstera Deliciosa. In regards to growth rate, you can find that a Borsigiana in its nature, in the most ideal condition, can reach full maturity within 1 year. But if you are having this plant inside of your home, the growth rate will be dependent on so many factors, including lighting, soil, humidity, things like that. But if the Monstera Borsigiana is again out in the most ideal temperature, the most ideal environment, whether it's a greenhouse or in the rainforest, that plant can be expected to grow to its mature, full size, full form, its final form in 1 year. The final thing that you can check for to identify your Borsigiana versus a Deliciosa is the petiole. The petiole is basically the point where the leaf connects with the stem. Okay, so this, if I'm showing you here on this plant, This is the petiole right here. This is the leaf. This is the stem. It is the point where the leaf and the stem connect. What you want to check out on the petiole is whether it is wrinkled or if it's smooth. The Monstera Borsigiana does not have a wrinkled petiole, while the Monstera Deliciosa does. Since the leaves are smaller, the petiole does not need to be wrinkled. The wrinkling aspect is sort of like an accordion. It allows for flexibility when there's a lot of wind, for the plant to avoid the leaf ripping off because of how large it is. The petioles for the Deliciosa are wrinkled, but like I mentioned, the petioles for the Borsigiana are not wrinkled because the leaf size are smaller and require less flexibility. They are smaller, they're not as heavy, and they don't require so much malleability and just like, oh, look at me in the wind. So those were some of the points, the key things that you can look at for your Monstera Borsigiana if you want to identify whether it is a Borsigiana or a Deliciosa. Now, in regards to Deliciosa, here are the key points, the little features that you can look at in order to identify whether your plant is now a Monstera Deliciosa. The Monstera Deliciosa has the ability to grow up to 9 feet within the most ideal environment. Like I said, that can be a greenhouse, that can be out in the wild, but keep in mind, if you have this plant inside of your home, it might not have the perfect conditions for it to grow to its final form, to the most ideal size that it preferably would want. The leaves of the Deliciosa are drastically, greatly larger than the leaves of the Borsigiana. The leaves can actually grow wide, like width-wise, up to 3 feet, and the plant annually can grow up to 9 feet. The Borsigiana can grow up to a maximum of 1.5 feet. The final thing that you can look for in order to identify whether your plant is a Deliciosa is the petiole, like I mentioned. So the petiole of a Deliciosa compared to the Borsigiana is that it is wrinkled because the leaves, one, are larger than the Borsigiana, so it will need to be more flexible when in the wild, in nature. You don't know what the weather is going to be like in a rainforest. It could be just like the craziest of rainstorms. It could be really windy. So this plant needs to have the ability to grow, to be flexible, to move in the wind in order to not lose its leaves. It is good to know that the Monstera Deliciosa, price-wise, in comparison to the Borsigiana, is more pricey. You can find Monstera Deliciosa for, I don't know, maybe, depending on where you are, for maybe like $20, $30, $40, while you can probably find a Borsigiana for maybe like $10, $15. So those are the key differences in being able to identify whether your plant is a Monstera Deliciosa or a Monstera Borsigiana. These characteristics apply also for when the plant is variegated. The only thing that's different between a green and a variegated plant is the difference between like having the ability to have like white, like muted greens, etc., etc. Variegation is literally just a mutation in the plants, just like genetic makeup. Care wise for these plants, the care is synonymous for the Deliciosa and the Borsigiana. They are pretty much the same plant with a few key differences, which separates and makes them actually different plants. For both the Borsigiana and the Deliciosa, younger plants can take medium to low light because they're smaller, they want to grow, they're like rampant, like give me more, like I'm ready to be an adult already. These plants do grow on the jungle floor, so they are not getting the brightest of brightest sun. They are like kind of canopy sort of plants. They are under trees, so they don't need direct light. They are used to having some sort of filtered light. So be careful if you are someone who wants to place this plant outside. It can't handle direct sunlight. This plant will burn because, again, this plant is one that lives under plants in the rainforest. So again, it's getting very filtered, low, medium light. So lighting from like 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. are more ideal if you are trying to give it as much of a natural sunlight as possible. In regards to soil, again, this plant lives in the rainforest, so it definitely is something that grows on others and requires well draining soil. It is not something that is like stuck on the ground, like, oh, a tree, you know, it's not like a tree. My personal mix, I actually think I have created a video. If I did, I'm going to tag it somewhere here. But I like to do a mix of just like perlite, orchid bark, a bit of soil, a bit of cocoa coir, some worm casting, some charcoal to mix it up and make it very, very airy, very nutritious, and very well drained. For watering, these plants are prone to root rot. Again, that's why you would prefer a well draining soil. Make sure you water this plant fully. You let it dry in between waterings and water it again. Don't be the person that's like constantly trying to, oh, the soil, the 1 inch is wet, it's dry, I must water it. No, you are going to kill your plant. Please let your monsteras dry out. Provide it with well draining soil. Give it appropriate lighting, but not too much sunlight. Humidity, if you can provide it with high humidity, they would love it. They are in the rainforest, so rainforest, these plants are just like all together, warm, delicious. Humidity, they love it. But if you don't have humidity, don't fret, don't go crazy about that, because it's okay. These plants can adapt if the other care and maintenance are provided to it. Fertilizer, it depends on how you fertilize. You can fertilize this plant monthly. I like to fertilize my plants. If I see them growing, they get fertilized pretty much for the most part. If you are interested in how I fertilize my plants, I do have a video speaking about all the fertilizers and how I use them. I will also link that above. I hope you're able to identify now whether your plant is a Monstera Deliciosa or a Monstera Borsigiana. The difference, again, you check the petiole, you can check the height, the size of the leaves, and also pricing. So like I mentioned, we are going to now identify whether or not this is a Monstera Deliciosa and whether this one is a Monstera Borsigiana or vice versa. So I'm going to go ahead and do a little screenshots, and we are going to decide whether or not which is what. Yay! So I actually only have Borsigianas. So this is a Monstera Borsigiana, and this is a Monstera Albo Borsigiana, and that is also in Monstera Albo Borsigiana. I do not own any Deliciosas, so womp womp womp. I will definitely keep an eye out to see if I can come across one day. And it's cool to have different plants that are the same, right? Like, why not? That's why we like variegated plants, right? With that being said, thank you so much, my salty pecans, for watching this video. If you liked it, please let me know by giving it a thumbs up and sharing. Subscribe if you aren't already. Join this little nutty family because we're pretty awesome here. Become a salty pecan, and don't forget to hit the notification bell to be notified every single time I upload a new video. And I'll see you on the next one. Let's get growing. Bye. Let me know down below, do you have Monsteras? If you do have a Monstera Swiss cheese plant, with this video's help, are you able to identify whether you have a Borsigiana or a Deliciosa? Let me know in the comments section below. And yeah.